YUNKJunk! Listen, you jerk, the bear gave me severe anxiety thanks to its high-quality cinematography and editing.
Listen, you jerk. In a world full of fakes and copycats, the bear actually gets real-life restaurant industry correct.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Listen, You Jerk, a podcast with Ozzy and Terry, where we tell you positive things but are very angry about it for some reason. Typically, we're trying to revisit things that maybe weren't widely filled with acclaim or things like that. But we cannot ignore how great the show The Bear is. It's the best show I've seen in 5 to 10 years. I have not felt feelings in a decade, and this gave me feelings. More so than dogs, more so than girlfriends. We're talking about TV doing the Lord's work and making me feel. How do you feel?
It made me feel a lot of things. I like TV a lot. I like TV a lot. I honestly might like it more than I like movies. Just because it's kind of more engaging. You know, you can keep coming back to it, whatever. But the problem with me, usually on a TV show or movies too, but TV shows specifically, where they try to do the lifestyle, the day to day, they get it wrong. Okay. This show gave me hope for other shows because it was so spot on. Like I'm a chef as my profession. So I have a pretty, in-depth firsthand account of all that. And it is, it pretty much the entire way through was accurate. And that was refreshing to see for once.
Yeah. The one thing I remember talking to you about that I can't identify with as much as you said you could is the Joel McHale character.
Right.
And when he comes in the first season, then we see him again in the second season, what that actually means. Describe who that person is in a kitchen environment.
Well, first off, you're going to have to tell me who Joel McHale is.
Oh, sorry. Joel McHale is the tall guy. He's got glasses on with the beard. He was in Community. He is a special guest star who is over Carmy's shoulder, basically saying, why aren't you on time? That guy.
Oh, yeah. Yes. Okay, so that is true, especially in like a fine dining establishment or anything like that, where Carmy was working. And I don't know why it's a thing. I think it's because the industry is so chaotic. Like you said, it is so intense, fast paced. I don't know if it's bred from that chaos or what, but some chefs, especially the high-end ones, feel as though it needs to be like an aggressive atmosphere, berating people, when someone screws up, it's very, end of the world type stuff. Mm-hmm. And I can relate to that because I have both worked for people that are like that, and there have been times when I've been like that, maybe not to that extreme, but in terms of the atmosphere of a kitchen is one of a kind. It's it's a brotherhood or a sisterhood where you could be screaming at each other's throats one minute and then, at the bar afterwards having a beer, being best friends the next minute. And that happens more often than you think, that type of interaction.
That's similar to ours as well. There's a lot of sets and things that you're on. I don't think anyone purposely goes aggressive, but everything that's done in like filmmaking, or in content creation, as it's called now, it is militaristic when you do it at like the higher level. When you do it at the higher level, it's expected that everyone is going to shout at each other at some point. We're going to get frustrated with each other at some point. I loved this thing that they would do because that is hyper realistic. I would say like the big thing that you saw in the show, not to put words in your mouth, but I'm going to, is the hyper realism. Yeah, is probably the thing that is most amazing about this show. But anyway, yeah, it is very much like rough and tumble. I always say it's got to be like athletes. It's got to be like, we're going to go out there and almost kill each other. Literally, our physical state will be in dire straits. Anyone who's ever been in a kitchen, I've heard about the 1,000-degree days, and things like that. And on my end, it's kind of like, hey, here's a camera. You got to get down there. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts. Figure out your way there. And if you got to sprint there while carrying, 75 pounds, that's what's going to happen. Right. So I certainly identify with that quite a bit. On my end, the thing that I want to kind of highlight is the cinematography itself and the editing add to this anxious feeling that is throughout the entire show. So they do a couple of things. One, they shoot beauty shots that are gorgeous of the food and whatnot, but the people are shot wider and on uncomfortable lens lengths. So a lot of it is uncomfortably close, but not on a macro lens or a detail lens that would give beauty. Instead, it's more of an approach that shows flaws. It's some of it is a wide angle, but really, really close, and you can see everybody's pores and things like that, and it's not pleasant. It's not supposed to be. I think you especially notice this in any sort of Carmy breakdown, but I really noticed it in the Christmas episode.
Mm-hmm.
So the Christmas episode, the way they shoot, oh my God, I can't believe I'm blanking. The way they shoot Jamie Lee Curtis is that of a crazy person, is that of a drunk almost. Like it is so awkwardly angled a lot of times. And we see her in different lighting, which is very interesting too. When Natalie sees her, Sugar,
Right.
when Sugar sees her, it's shot almost a little bit ajar, and it's shot on a wider angle, which makes features kind of bigger, which is very similar to when you see someone when you're drunk, right?
Right.
And she is an over-the-top alcoholic in the show.
Oh, yeah.
And just the way they film it is incredible. And I think that's the point of the cinematography. Everybody is filmed in their element. For example, I'm going to say, is it Fak? F-A-K? Is that Maddie Matheson's character?
I think so. That's how I heard it.
So they shoot Maddie Matheson for comedy. Comedy's always shot in the wide or maybe a medium, because you want to catch someone doing something zany or wacky. He's kind of doesn't really have a moment where he's ever truly upset. It's always comedic. Even the point where he flips out and he says, excuse the term, Jewish lightning
Right.
a bunch of times. It's shot for comedy.
Right.
It is his close-up. It is his come to Jesus realization. I can save everything in this moment, but it's shot for comedy.
Right.
Carmy is never shot flattering. Never. Nothing about it is flattering at all in the way he's portrayed. There's no classic portraiture. He is never 3-point lit. There is no time where it's clearly like a beautiful 85 millimeter angle right on him, perfectly pristine right here, lighting all in place. They don't do that. And that's clearly super intentional.
Yeah.
Some people shoot and, this goes back to like Stanley Kubrick when he started breaking rules of like, I want to shoot it as it is, not what's called high key lighting. So every sitcom is high key lighting. Then there's low key lighting, which is there's intention. Then there's an extreme example of low key lighting, which is like practicals only. This is not that show.
Right.
They're using every trick in the book and they're creating beautiful shots, but they're blending practical and advanced lighting together. And everything is intentional. Everything is intentional, and it has to be. Because the way this thing is shot, there is an episode in the first season that's a oneer. That's insane.
Right.
But the way this thing is shot is frenetic pacing. Frenetic. So the shots that we're hanging on and the shots that we're doing dolly shots or slow things like that, it's usually in a point where the kitchen isn't rocking and rolling.
Right.
Right. It's usually despair.
Right.
So despair, a classic shot is dolly track backwards away from the person so they get smaller in the frame as if to show that, there's less and less. So whenever they're cleaning the kitchen on the floor, that is framed hyper specific and moves back typically between two planes, which just makes your eye think you're moving in an even greater distance.
Right.
So it's just crazy how everybody's feeling is being conveyed with the camera.
Right. Right. And to double down on that, again, from that realism perspective, it definitely has to be intentional because, that's the same way it is in a restaurant when you're cooking. Like, the entire day is breakneck prepping. Like, things go wrong, mistakes happen, people don't show up. It's crazy until that plate goes out, and then the finished product is beautiful and finished. And a lot of people, they're sitting at their table and they get this gorgeous plate and they're like, it's almost like a different world. Like, you're out there and you're watching, it's all elegant and nice and quiet, and people are like, ooh, this is so good, it's perfect, da, da, da. And then you take one step in at the back and it's just utter chaos. And I think having the food and making those food shots like gorgeous and perfect, and then everything else chaotic, and like you were saying, like, doing like the panning in and out and all that, like that's definitely intentional because it's kind of a metaphor for what working back there is like.
That is I didn't even think of that until you just said it. Yeah, you're right. the way the kitchen is shot is extremely different than the way the restaurants are shot.
Yeah, and
especially at the end.
That's a joke that we all talk about. It's like when you go through those two swinging doors to go into the back into the kitchen, it's like going into a different world. Like you could be, it's quiet and nice, and it could be a nice 5-star restaurant. People are walking around, monkey suits and all that, and then take one step into the back, everyone's screaming, pans are flying everywhere, there's cursing. Like it's a completely different world. So that was one of the first things I noticed when they were in the shooting aspect of it. Was they framed it, the way you perceive it if you work in that environment.
Well, I also promise you, they built that kitchen larger than a normal kitchen, just so that they could get cameras in and out of places. Because even though it feels cramped,
it feels very.
I promise you, it is bigger, and they're squeezing with lenses and things like that. It's just so awesome to see all the pieces come together on a show from a production standpoint.
Right.
Like everything is on fire, and they're making it seem like a limited crew can do this. They can't, for the record. Like this is, you cannot attempt a show like this with less than 50 people. Not a chance. Some of the moves that they're doing and being able to come up with the sequencing and just the way they walk through shots and things like that. There's a behind the scenes of that oneer, which is insane. A oneer refers to a shot that is one take.
Right.
It's not, but they still shoot it like that. And maybe it's made up of like 4 takes. But the way they do that one is just incredible. And I saw them, they had to physically move walls in and out in order to change the space so that people could walk this way and the other. It's really, really just an impressive testament to filmmaking. It's one of those shows that reminds you why some filmmaking is truly boring. Because you see a master at work like here, and you remember why for me, you remember why you got into this. You're fascinated for the first time in a long time. And it's a show about a guy who's, it's a show about a guy trying to figure out who he is, dealing with anxiety, taking over a restaurant. Like, This is not Lord of the Rings. It is a very, very tight, somber, individual story. And they shoot it as if it's one of the biggest Hollywood films of all time.
Yeah, for sure. And with yes, you said that perfectly.
So the other thing I want to talk about is the editing. The editing of this is incredible. The shots are beautiful and they're intentional, but they are complemented by one of the most aggressively paced edits I've ever seen, that they do it so that you feel tension. You feel anxiety. This is the only other thing I've seen like this is the Safdie brothers movies. So Uncut Gems, and then the one with Robert Pattinson before that.
Oh, Good Time. Yeah, I love that movie.
Those 2 movies are the only other times I've felt this level of tension. And I've seen Heat with Robert De Niro. And this is more tense. This is more anxiety inducing.
Right.
Quick pace of the editing has to do with a lot of this. So you quicken the pace, we have to pay attention, things are faster, we get other people's perspectives fast, which puts us in a state of if we were really there. I've certainly been on sets where 5 crew members are talking to me, and I'm the director, I have to have an answer, and it's fast because the client is sitting there getting upset. So I've been in these situations, and just to be able to create the feeling of everyone is talking to me at once is amazing when it comes from the editing of this, which I'm sure is the kitchen.
Oh, it absolutely is. And getting talked to by everyone all at once, for sure, like as a manager in there, if you're in charge, just everyone has a question. So that happens everywhere. And that's something else that's great about the show is they take an extreme example of something that everyone goes through, like treading water, just that type of anxiety, getting overwhelmed.
Yeah.
And they made it accessible. That's why it's so popular. It's not just popular amongst, industry people. It's popular to everyone. Everyone can relate to it. So it's that type of, that doing it that way, I think was great too, because the kitchen is extremely chaotic, but other jobs can be too. So I think it's kind of, it used an extreme example to relate to everybody.
Yeah, and I think sticking with editing, they edit in detail shots. So it's one thing to do shot, reverse shot like we're doing. Actually, Dylan, here, play with me. My angle, his angle, my angle, his angle. So if we do that fast enough, go full throttle. Okay, you're gonna have anxiety from that, right? A little peek behind the curtain. You're gonna have anxiety from that alone, just because you're having so many visual cues. It's just a trick that people use. But to edit in a third shot, which we won't be able to do right now, of a detail, for example, a ticking clock, or a fire beginning, or the kitchen timers in the Christmas episode, that is genius editing to create anxiety. Because the other thing that is really difficult to deal with in life is time.
Yeah.
When time is a factor, it's one thing where I can say, I've got 5 minutes for you, 5 minutes for you, 5 minutes for you. That's one thing. If you have no time, if you have 10 seconds, 5 seconds, 3 seconds, 1 second, and everyone hates you, that is really, really difficult.
Right.
So just the way they manage feelings through editing is a lot due to pace and a lot due to what they're putting on the screen.
Right.
Right. I got to talk about the most anxious thing of all, which is the Christmas episode. You've seen this.
Yes.
This is so realistic. Again.
Yep.
Thank God I've never been in this situation, but I can see it.
Right.
The way they edit, her little timer's going off constantly between bottles of booze, between her cutting between, I'm crying in this scene, I'm yelling in this scene, I'm crying in this scene, I'm yelling in this scene, as if it's all happening at the same time, while you're also cutting to endless empty bottles of alcohol and dishes and things. And also you're seeing the actual food, which doesn't look great. It is very interesting that they don't present this food looking very nice at all.
Well, yeah, that's because
like the fish heads.
Right. Yeah. Right. I mean, it's hard to make a fish head look good.
Yeah, it is. But we do it every day. No, but yeah. So as far as the way that's edited, that creates anxiety. But this is where expert level acting and scripting come in. There are multiple characters in this scene. Mikey, both uncles, the mom, Donna, Carmy, who we kind of have his perspective from most of it, like we're viewing it through him. And then the facts.
Yeah.
That's kind of, and then we have John Mulaney and a couple, and I guess Carmy's older sister or something like that in there too. There's a couple things going on that are at play in the script and that they're kind of have to balance here to, again, create that feeling of anxiety, which is it's written to where everyone's an asshole.
Yep. I mean, that they are. Yeah. And that's kind of, to be the type of person that Carmy is, you got to be born out of that. Like you're forged in it. So that would make sense that they're all like that.
But the interesting one, some of the characters just stay themselves, and that's fine. For example, I don't really see an issue with Sugar, and I don't really see an issue with Oliver Platt's character, who is amazing and deserves every Emmy in the world. They're kind of the same that they normally are. Mikey on drugs and the mom drunk, plus Lee, who I can't figure out. I don't think he's struggling from a substance abuse, but there's something there. Those three create a level of tension that I have never, ever seen before.
Yeah.
Ever.
And it's like one of their early interactions too. It's like they're like it's just out of nowhere.
So some of that is script. I got to believe some of that is improv. John Bernthal is putting on a clinic for how to play an addict.
Yeah.
An addict who's pissed off. Mm-hmm. And I get why the uncle's mad. The uncle's mad because Bernthal's kind of a screw up. The first shot he takes at him is about a business plan. And right there, you see Bernthal kind of chest up a little bit and just kind of meet him square. He's like, you can't protect him, Rick. Essentially, right. That's kind of coming out. But they write in this little scene of Carmy's only upset because his big brother has been ignoring him.
Right.
And there's this little scene where they're in a closet together. And he basically says, dude, I would have called. Essentially, he's trying to say, I was trying to protect you from me.
I wanted to leave you out of it.
Right.
Right.
Of, his addiction issues, the restaurant. Carmy's just, being the little brother who just wants to be included. But then right after he leaves, you see him like pull his hood up and kind of slap himself in the face a couple times. Mm-hmm. As if to say, my addiction is going to overtake me right now.
Right.
Right after that, he's happy, but his uncle has caught on that he is now on drugs and calls him out on it. And the fork scene begins.
Yep.
That is some of the most amazing writing and acting that I have seen. Yeah. I was literally scared.
Yeah.
And Mulaney is there. It's a great fucking choice. He's from Chicago, but great choice to put someone like him in there of like, he's not exactly who I would want to be the captain of my ship if we're being overtaken by pirates.
Right.
So it's just like this voice who's like, oh my God, what the hell kind of thing. Is he holding the fork? Is he still holding the fork? Okay, still holding the fork. But that tension is incredible.
Yeah.
It is incredible, and it's just written well. It's written as, here's an uncle who's disappointed in his nephew. I've been that nephew. So I can identify with that. And here is a classic tough guy. We all have a tough guy friend. Right. You are probably it. As far as something is brewing here, and I am not afraid to see where this goes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'll take that.
I'm not making I'm not taking a shot at you or anything like that. No, I'm just saying,
you're
like,
correct.
Like, you witness the people who aren't going to back down from a fight, even though everyone is pleading with them to back down from the fight. So that level of anxiety is interesting. But my God, when the mom has her breakdown, nobody's helping me, yet she's throwing everyone out of the kitchen.
Right.
Jamie Lee Curtis is putting on a clinic as far as acting is concerned. I've never seen anything like that.
Right.
You know what? I have seen something like that. Toni Collette in Hereditary.
Okay.
Hereditary? Is that how you say it? Yeah. Hereditary. The have you seen that movie?
Mm-mm.
Dylan, have you seen that movie?
Yes.
Yeah, so she's basically, it's this lady who's kind of overtaken by a demon, so acting like Exorcist style. And Toni Collette, I mean, the fact that she didn't win an Oscar is such a shame. But it's the same as this. This kind of acting I've never seen. It's uncomfortable because of its accuracy.
Yeah. And that's, again, I keep that from corner to corner. This whole thing is just for me, the realism is spot on. And because that's how it is going to work. It's anxiety through and through. It's mental breakdowns all over the place. And this is just another example of that. This is exactly how it goes.
Yeah. I mean, I know I'm a little all over the place, but maybe that's intentional because I'm trying to make you anxious. Because I'm the bear.
I can do that all by myself. Don't worry.
But I mean, this is an absolute masterclass in acting, in writing, in shooting, in editing.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything like it. I really haven't. But the Jamie Lee Curtis character is. I've never seen an alcoholic portrayed like this, I guess.
Meaning what?
It's realistic.
Yeah. Yeah. And because, I wouldn't call myself an alcoholic, but I love drinking, right? And that felt more like, the portrayal of alcoholics are, all over the place, like Denzel in Flight, like, Extremes, that type of thing. But this was an accessible one. This is like where, like, it's clear that she went down a slope and got to this point. Because her family, is still putting up with it. It's not like she's always been like this. And I think that's something that's hard to portray. So I'd imagine she's got some type of experience with it, a family member or something.
But she's famously sober.
Oh, okay. Well, then
so she was probably herself. Channeling that.
Yeah, okay.
But visually, it's presented as if you are in a stupor. A lot of people try to attempt this of like, but when you're watching it, if you've ever been drunk and in a kitchen where stuff is happening, it's like that. Things are popping in, things are popping out. Things are not making sense.
Right.
It's messy. There's like a little, like, I promise you there is a mist filter on the entire time on that camera, causing it not to be as clear.
Right.
It is not as clear as other shots, and that's intentional, Right. And it looks, it's like you could say that episode looks like you are drunk yourself.
Right, with like the swinging camera angles and all that.
Yes.
You're like, well, if it follows it all, it'll like, instead of just, gracefully doing it, it'll like loop around and stuff.
Yeah, there's handheld stuff, and it's kind of erratic, and sometimes they shoot Jamie Lee Curtis from here.
Right.
Which, hats off to her for not being a diva. because that is an ugly angle. It is. It's just, you never shoot up on a woman right here.
Right.
And they do it. But through that, you see her flaws. You see her rage and you see her sadness. And you see this again, interestingly enough, the reveal when we see her again outside the restaurant. Again, camera angles right here. Like the intentions on this thing are incredible. And I've been on sets. Some of that you have to just feel and do on in the moment when you're dealing with night shoots, especially,
right.
or, large volume of people, It's tough. And this is just masterful filmmaking. The other part of this is the portrayal of an entrepreneur. Like Carmy, how he's acted, how he's written, how we see him, how it's constant screaming and yelling and moving. Like I have lived that.
Right.
In many ways, I am living that in times. Like, basically what I'm trying to say is I am a screaming idiot in a freezer. That's who I am at my core.
Right.
Is it's happening right now that one of our crew members, Dylan, is running this show. But I feel like Carmy of like, I should be cooking this. I should be kind of doing everything. And it's not until you get trapped in a fucking freezer
right.
that you can let the guys like show you what they really do and they perform. So that 5-minute sequence in the last episode where Carmy gets caught in the freezer and cannot help,
right,
is every business owner's, that's who all of us are. That is every entrepreneur with a dreams
right.
thing, because eventually you have to let them fly. And when they do it, it's incredible.
Right.
And it's not a matter of, and Carmy does this too. It's not that Carmy feels he can do it better than everyone else. It's that he feels he's letting them down by not being there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's how I took it, but that's because that's how I feel in the same situation. Like, say I have a day off and the kitchen gets crushed,
yeah,
and I find out about it the next day. Like I feel guilty. I feel bad about that. Like I feel bad about like not being at work on my day off, which is a crazy thing to think about and to even articulate. But yeah, like, I mean, as entrepreneur, management, whatever, what have you, there's always going to be that point where you have to, kind of take that step off the ledge and trust the people that are underneath of you, and I think that was a journey that Carmy's been making since the first episode of season 1, is being able to trust the people around him. And I think that culmination of him getting locked in that freezer, I think that was, that last little piece where he didn't really have a choice. He had to step off the ledge. And I don't think he ever would have actually done that without, getting pushed a little bit.
Yeah, there's something about, there's something about, when we're in an emergency situation, that is when you see what people are really made of. And when you see what people are really made of, they also see in themselves what they're really made of.
Right.
So Richie is a great example of this.
Right, exactly. Having him go stodge.
Carmy gets, first of all, Carmy is doing what all of us do with their, closest compatriot. I've certainly done this with, I've done this with my colleague Cody a bunch of, essentially, in our company, Cody is the female chef's role of like, Carmy's there,
like the sous
he's
chef.
the executive chef.
Yeah,
but really she's the leader
right.
of the squad, right? And we have done that same thing of like, yell at each other and whatnot. And when you're doing that, you kind of also feel like you have control, and someone is like, whoa, like, take a minute. But the second you're fully removed from it, that is terrifying.
Right.
And what you see in those moments is who everybody really is. So, and then Richie is the shining example of this, where no one is counting on Richie. And then he says, I can do this to the sous chef. Like, I can take over saying all the orders. I've got this. Yeah. And it's like, you sure? You sure? And then it's go.
He's got it.
That's business. That's all of business is. You don't find the next player on your team until they're put in that situation.
And that part with Richie is awesome too, because if that had happened in the beginning of season 1 or even at any point in season 1, he'd have crumbled. He would have never said any of that.
No.
None of that scene even happened. But because he goes through and he does the staging, which for anyone who doesn't know, that's when you kind of go out to a different restaurant and kind of apprentice for a little bit. You learn, whether it's the type of style of cuisine they do or a certain chef's techniques or whatever it is. But having him go out and do that showed that it was like he had a lot of growth, especially because we were getting backstory on him. So we see not only how far he's come since season 1, but how far he's come since further back.
Yeah.
And I think that was a great moment for me, seeing him at the very end be like, I got this, and then he keeps it moving. That's something like, for me, like if I was to see that in my kitchen, that would be like, I'd be like proud papa. I'd be like, oh, my little ugly duck's turned into a swan. He's flying away. Like that was a very cool scene. Like I was like rooting for Richie at that point. Like I was like, yeah, that's my man.
As soon as you get to the Richie episode, you are team Richie for the rest of it.
Yeah.
Interesting point that goes in line with all the other things. The way that restaurant is shot is way different than anything we've seen. Way different than anything we've seen.
Right. And that's definitely intentional too, because you can walk into, because
that's the working machine.
Right.
We're the broken machine.
Right.
We want to be the working machine. So the broken machine is all shot like fucking this.
Right.
Here, Dylan, if you hit the right joystick on my camera, it'll. That's what it's like. We have new toys. That is very much what it's like. As in, it's literally shot at that angle, and then everything is pristine in the other. Everything's on dolly tracks in the other.
Right.
Everything is calm. There's intention behind everything. It's just it's amazing, this medium, how you can communicate all of these different emotions with shots and angles. And it's a show like this that really shows you what a cinematographer can do,
right,
and how they can make you feel. So many things that are visual do not make you feel, and I get it. Our number one rule is get all the fundamentals before you do something fancy.
Right.
It's just part of the game. You like, that's great if, you tried this advanced souffle or something and everything came together. But if you forgot to put a fork out, it doesn't matter.
Right.
So that means they're doing all that coverage, and then they're doing these hyper advanced shots. It's just incredible to see. It's incredible to see.
And then even on top of that, if you take the kitchen that we saw in that first episode, the one with Joel McHale, that one was, that's still a working machine, and it's, it was still kind of angled different or cut differently, because I think it's to show just how different every kitchen is too. Like I could walk into 10 different kitchens on Main Street, and you would get 10 completely different atmospheres, types of people, vibes.
Yeah.
Whether it's calm, whether it's angry, whether it's people screaming, whether people are like each other, every single one's different. So having him stage and making it such a different atmosphere, is a good metaphor for, and, make you feel like the whole like broken machine versus working one. But it is also kind of that attention to detail for like the people like me who have worked in multiple different places. It's like, okay, wow, like, yeah, like that's why you make someone stage, because it's 100% different of an experience. So it kind of gives you a little bit like fuller perspective. So I think that little, it was, real quick. It was such a fine, minute detail, but it said so much to me.
I'll just give you a minute to reset that angle real quick. You know what I'm saying, though? Mm-hmm. Yeah. A little bit more. Right there. Thank you. Great job.
I was trying to figure out what was bothering you. I was like, what?
No, it wasn't bothering me. It's that everything was going super well. So I wanted to make sure we got that back to normal. That's chef life.
Yeah.
That's the smudge.
Yeah.
You just witnessed the smudge.
Yes. Well,
for us, a camera that's a little bit off the side or a little out of focus, that's our smudge. What is a smudge?
For me?
What is a smudge? Like, what were they talking about? Were they talking about the smudge?
Was it during a plate up?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So a smudge is like when you're plating up, you've got your however you want to plate it, make it look nice. And then you'd usually drizzle with something. So say like it's a dessert, you let your cake at a nice little angle, and you get everything kind of, equal, and then you can drizzle the plate and just make zigzags over it. Mm-hmm. Whatever the plate up is, whether it's zigzags, whatever. A smudge is like you're from your finger handing the plate through the window. So then that person that's receiving it to send it out to the table, has to like check the plate, wipe the plate, make sure it's all good to go and everything. But that's something you don't want going out to a table, especially if you're looking for a star, is if there's a smudge on your plate, that goes to show dirty kitchen, bad sanitation, no attention to detail, that type of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I was curious of that. The back to shooting. The other thing that's shot uniquely and beautifully is when Marcus goes overseas and is in, I think, Sweden. Is that where he is? Sweden, or what's the other one? Switzerland? I think he's in Sweden.
There's a couple of them up there.
I think he's in geography with Ozzy and Terry. So when he goes there, that's shot very, very interestingly as well. And it's shot as if to be foreign. It's also shot very calm. Mm-hmm. It's just him and Will Poulter. Great hair. Great, fantastic hair in this show.
Yeah.
Like phenomenal hair. It deserves an Emmy for hair.
Do they have those?
Costume?
Yeah.
Give him one just for hair. But that's very calm, and he's teaching him in a non-stressful way. He's precise. He's everything is we're talking like millimeters of whether something's right or not because they're working on desserts. He's precise, but there's a kindness in telling them that's wrong, which I struggle with. I don't know how that's possible. But it's very kind, and it's shot very delicately, and the lighting's kind of soft on their face. It feels much different than, dirty Chicago, balls to the wall, American kitchen.
Right.
Really interesting detail when they show, he tells a story about this other chef that was better than him. And then there's a picture, it was Carmy.
Right.
Carmy was the other chef. And that's a detail shot, which was very interesting.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of those. The attention to detail across the board was just
it's a good way
fantastic.
to put it.
Fantastic.
How's the detail in food? You're a food guy. Is the food right on?
Yeah, everything. So I obviously was paying a little bit careful attention to that but once I realized how realistic the show was, the food kind of fell away from me a little bit. That was the cool part. But like for me, it was about like the relationships and like the workings of the kitchen, not so much what they were putting out. But yes, everything he's putting out looks like legitimately made. Like I'm never like what is that? What kind of protein? What animal is that on that plate? Or like everything looks very well done. It looks like a chef actually came in and made it, which I assume is what happened.
Well, I mean, I think the reason this is weird to me because the guy who made this show, used to work in kitchens and stuff like that. I think Christopher Storer is his name. Okay. So it is a hyper realistic, but this guy has an absolute mastery over this craft.
Yeah.
I know Matty Matheson is involved as an executive producer, but he was always in front of the camera. So I can't imagine that he's the one informing this behind the camera. But the behind the camera stuff on this show is just awe-inspiring. It's stuff that I wish I could do.
Yeah.
And that is so amazing to feel like, Jesus, those are people at the top of their game. That's the Olympics of cinematography, as far as I'm concerned, and editing.
Right.
And storytelling. Like this is like, these are all like Olympian levels, elite levels of all of the things that go into making a film or making a TV show. And it's just incredible to see people at the top of their game. I would kill to be on this set. And I think actually our editor has a buddy who worked on the second season. But I would just be in awe to see how this thing is done. Are they flipping out the whole time on site, or are they executing it like the second kitchen? Because it's just a masterclass. And, I'm so happy it exists.
Right.
And I'm so angry that we haven't gotten more stuff like this now that I know it can be made in this modern era of filmmaking and television. Why aren't we getting more of this?
It's a good question. Maybe we will. Maybe this will be the Steph Curry of cinema.
The Steph Curry of cinema, the bear.
Yeah, Steph Curry came in, changed the game. Now everyone in the next generation shooting threes from half court.
True. Is there a player on the Grizzlies that can also do this? Because then it would work with my bear metaphor.
I mean, John Morant, but he's got gun charges, so he's probably not doing anything.
So does Richie.
True.
So does Richie, bro. Maybe we should all have guns in the NBA.
Why not?
That's how you get the bear. Well, I just think this is an absolute masterclass. And I love this show that we do, you and I, because it's me being angry about how great something is. So listen, you jerk. Watch The Bear. Watch it all in one sitting. Don't get up. Just sit in it and analyze how it makes you feel. It's some of the most beautiful craftsmanship I've ever seen on a show.
Listen, you jerk. If you ever you're that type of person that goes to a restaurant and is a jerk, listen up. Watch The Bear. You will get a live look into exactly how much work goes into your meal that you have at a restaurant. And you might think twice about being a jerk to them. Great cinema, attention to details on point.
And the guy who makes this show, Dylan, came from restaurants. That's why it's crafted so beautifully. You jerk! YUNKJunk!